Let's unbox the Black Series 6-inch figure of Boba Fett as seen on Tython.
Villa Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it.
Hello there, thanks for visiting Villa Varykino. This past weekend we met Boba Fett himself, Temuera Morrison, at our local Armageddon Expo convention. So to celebrate, we'll be unboxing Boba Fett collectibles this week. I thought I would kick things off with this Black Series 6-inch figure of Boba Fett as we see him on Tython in Chapter 14 of the Mandalorian series, The Tragedy, because this is the point where Boba Fett really is back. We have a little bit of a tease of Boba Fett in some of those earlier episodes, particularly in Season 1, but this was where Tem was fully back on screen, and it was just a fantastic episode. So this is the perfect figure to kick off a Boba Fett celebration, celebrating Tem's portrayal as Boba. So I really can't wait to get stuck into this. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up really soon, I'll of course take this figure out of the packaging so we can take a closer look at the figure and all of the details. But first, let's take one last look at the packaging. I think it's really interesting for this one that we have this big soft goods robe, which does hide a lot of the details underneath. I thought perhaps for a figure like this, perhaps the soft goods robes would be packaged open so that you can see all of the details underneath, kind of like the way that Vader's robes are often tucked quite behind the figure so they don't hide it. I do appreciate that it is very tidy in the box for people that do prefer to keep their Black Series packaged, but it does unfortunately hide a lot of the details. We can kind of get a bit of a hint. We can see some of the sculpted details, like of course his belt and some of those details there in the side art, but they are a little bit hidden for the figure there. We can see the two weapons. Of course, we know now that Boba Fett has spent some time with the Tuskens, so he comes with a gaffy stick and a long sort of Tusken Raider style sniper rifle here as well. And obviously the soft goods. We can see a little bit of the weathering that we know was caused by his escape from the Sarlacc pit. Definitely keen to take a closer look at the details there. Very standard Black Series packaging, of course. Lovely big window here and that angled side art. This is from the Mandalorian series where we have that kind of orangey sandy color. Really nice there. And the title there for this character, Boba Fett in brackets Tython, because of course we now have many different versions of Boba Fett from both the Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett series. I really like the side art for this one. It has a really great likeness of Temuera as Boba Fett there, wielding his gaffy stick high. I really think that's cool, and we get those details of his costume. We can see sort of the wrappings on his arm, his belt coming all the way down. We get the very end point of the gaffy stick all the way there in the corner, and there we have that accent color at the bottom, Boba Fett in brackets Tython. Very nice. On the back we have the insert of the art there. I do have some unfortunate sticker residue from the store. It just wouldn't come off. It's a bit of a shame. I do keep the boxes for my Black Series figures, so I don't like having this on there, but this was what I have. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. We have that color stripe here across the back. This one is number 16 from the Black Series of figures from The Mandalorian. We have a little bit of a blurb here about Boba Fett. Once regarded as one of the most fearsome and capable bounty hunters in the galaxy, Boba Fett seemingly met his demise in the Sarlacc pit on Tatooine. A survivor to his core, Fett lived to fight another day. So very fun there. Of course, we've got that window going around the corner there, a little bit of a window there at the top, so it lets in just a little bit of light. But yes, I think it's definitely time to get this figure out so we can check out all of those details. So now I have the Boba Fett figure and all of his accessories out of the packaging. I thought it was really interesting. When it was packaged, I could only see the two large weapons, but there was actually a third, a small blaster pistol was packaged down below by his feet. So really interesting to know that that was in there as well. Definitely keen to check out all of those accessories, but of course, let's start off with the figure. So when he was packaged, he's pretty much completely covered by the soft goods robe. So let's start there. What I think is really interesting and a lot more clearer now that I have it out is that the edges of all of the raw edges here are all completely kind of snipped to give a very weathered effect. And you can kind of see this isn't just a straight cut edge. The whole edging of this robe has this kind of weathered effect, which is really quite cool. That's just a lot of little detailed cuts along the edges there. It's on the sleeves, on the hood, along all of those lower edges to the robe. Really just sort of adds a little bit extra. It makes it different to a Jedi robe that often has just those straight edges. So I really like that. Gives it a bit more of a Tuscan vibe there. But of course, I want to see what's underneath. Okay, so let's just pull those ones back. You can really see the edges there. I love that. So of course, we've got some fantastic detail here. We've got that really cool sort of bandolier belt there with all of that extra sort of ammo. And we've got a lot of sculpted fabric components here underneath as well in plastic. So we've got big flowy pants. We've got a bit of sort of plastic here for a sash coming down from his belt as well. We can see his boots as well. I'm going to take this off in a little bit so we can see around the chest, and we can also see some of the detail there at the hands as well. I'm really just impressed with how well this robe is sort of sitting on him. It kind of just holds itself closed, not too closed. It kind of folds open just a little bit more towards the legs. Nice and free for some posing there. Good length for the arms there, so his hands are sticking out there at the bottom. And I really like the way that the hood is wide enough to sort of fold it down. Of course, when you're trying to make something look different to Jedi robes, it can be a little bit tricky, but I think the weathering and the way this cloak fits down tightly around his shoulders, keeps it away from his head so he doesn't look like Sidious or a Jedi with a hood up. Of course, I want to see what this looks like if I do pull the hood up. Okay, so we're gonna get a little bit of a sort of a puffy situation here. There isn't any sort of wire or any kind of ability here to really sculpt this hood. So it's not really going to be worn up. It just kind of looks a bit big, but that is kind of the point, isn't it? It's got nice stitching there. We can see that there are actually 3 lines of stitching. We've got a little bit of a tuck here, and a full seam across the top to give it some shape. So a lot of detail there, but it is really supposed to be worn down over the shoulders. I'm just going to sort of put that back there. Because this is a knit fabric and we have got these little cuts to the edge, there is a potential that you can sort of, if you stretch it, you might sort of ladder it or create some sort of damage that I don't particularly want along this edge. So I'm not going to stress test this edge much. I am going to be very careful, like I generally am with most of the soft goods on my Star Wars action figures, particularly with some of the robes. I know on some of my Vader figures, little bits of fluff come off on my hands when I'm handling it, and I don't want to lose a lot of fibers on my cloak. So I'm going to try and handle it carefully, but I am still very keen to see all the sculpting underneath. So definitely keen to see what he is like with all of his sort of posing features underneath. I'm just going to put his arms straight out to the side, just so we can see. There isn't seams at the shoulders. It's just a straight piece of fabric there. There's no seams here. So this generally should give us a bit more freedom of movement. If there was seams here, it might get a little bit tight around the shoulders and just kind of give us a little bit more of a narrower space to move in. But you can see we've just got some nice free movement here around the shoulders, which is very nice. Side seams running up and finishes along the underside of the sleeves. Nice and easy for the Hasbro to make these. I like how sort of full it is. It's giving us a full proper robe. Obviously, we've put the arms out. We are opening it up there a little bit at the front. And it does have a little bit of a collar. If I pull that back, I'm quite impressed that we've got sort of like a little bit of a soft goods collar here, just poking up at the top of the neckline here. Really nice. And we've got some stitches here which hold the cloak closed, so we're not going to be able to sort of fully open it like a Jedi robe. It is held there. So for the sake of investigation, I'm going to see if I can pull this off. So I'm just going to see how well I can pivot his arms up without sort of seeing the articulation points on the underside. Going to see how well I can get this off, because I really do want to see. I don't like moving figures when I can't see what I'm doing. It makes me anxious. Just going to see how well I can get this off. I think I might go with this arm first. If I can just get to his arms. Can we click his arm up a little bit better? There we go. Okay, trying not to pull too much at that stitch point. There we go. Okay, there we go. So now we can fully see. This always makes me anxious, but I really wanted to see what the sculpting was like, particularly around the shoulders. So we can see that his under tunic has got some sculpted shoulder pieces there. I was wondering why I couldn't get the arm all the way up. I can see when I pivot that up, this is a little bit rubbery. I can see it just kind of moving as I'm kind of pulling the arm up against that, but that was giving a little bit of resistance. I was wondering why I couldn't get his arms straight up. I thought surely I'll be able to do that without looking too much. But yes, that was a little bit of a restriction there. So I think, yeah, we've got some really interesting sculpting there. Sometimes I'm not sure if I've got the arms the right way. I think that one's facing the right way. And here, if I can just get that one very stiff on this arm, actually. Very stiff. Okay, there we go. Okay, so yeah, that striped tunic. It's so much a shame that all of this detail was hidden under this robe. Love the robe, but it was hiding a lot in the packaging. Wow, there's a lot going on here. Of course, we don't even really see this detail in the show, of course. This is all completely hidden. These would be details that Hasbro would be privy to with their work with Lucasfilm for costume details, of course, before these shows come out. For the general public, Hasbro's got the reference pictures so they can work on the sculpting, getting this stuff ready. We can see that we've got this huge, big sort of sculpted cowl sort of neckline here around the figure going all the way into the back. Wow, I'm just taking it all in. There is so much detail here that's generally going to be completely hidden. If you never take this off, you're not going to see all of this detail. Wow, that's just absolutely fantastic, isn't it? Really cool. And of course, we can very clearly see the holster for that extra pistol that was hidden there in the box as well. So much extra stuff that you're not really going to see. So this does seem, this shoulder strap, I can move it. It isn't fixed at the shoulder, but it is attached to the belt, so that's not going to come off, and I wouldn't want to remove that anyway. But yes, a little bit, you can just kind of see I can sort of squeeze that tunic, so there is a little bit of rubbery nature there. Interesting that it does come so far out over the shoulders, so that does impact, because of course I kind of, you know, want to do, he does sort of wield the gaffy stick up high, as you generally do, you know, so you kind of want to get the arms a little bit higher on that. So I am going to be spending a bit of time working with the posing for this one. I think particularly with this might impact a little bit of that sort of raised up arm sculpting. I really like the paint detail on the belt here, and we can see it's all got that sort of cord underneath, and I can see the textures of all those lines of cord there underneath the main sort of weapon belt there. Really like all of that sort of gold accent painting there. And of course we've got the strap in the back with an accented buckle, and we've got this sort of fabric strap here joining that front panel of cord or braid underneath that belt there. And we can see the lower part of that striped or ribbed tunic there coming down there, kind of finishes at the belt at the front. We've got a little bit of a flat panel here. And then of course we've got his big sort of flowing sort of robe style pants. Always a little bit tricky doing articulated legs with these big fabric pants. So I'm really impressed with the deep sculpting that we've got here. But this upper thigh rotation point does cut in a little bit. And as soon as we rotate it, all of those lines no longer line up, and it does look a little bit, personally for me, I find it a bit distracting. I know if the robe is covering that, that's not an issue. We're not really going to see that. But yes, it's gonna it doesn't line up. I don't know a better way for Hasbro to do that, but yes. So we've still got the articulation, but it is gonna look a little bit funny. And of course, we're going to end up with the same thing on this side, but it is a little bit more hidden by this strap here for the holster. So the holster feels like I can just move it a little bit side to side. It is attached at the belt permanently here. And we've got a little bit of a strap there on the inner thigh. So it's kind of hiding. It's like directly on that articulation point, but I can demonstrate that I can swivel that there. I like these plastic parts for the sort of draped fabric sashes off his belt. We've got a fair bit of flexibility there, so they're not going to, you can see I can move it quite freely. It's not going to stop us from articulating at the leg, but I feel like this holster here is really going to impact. Let's see, how high can I get this up? Okay, I can get it to about there. And I feel like because it is hitting on the inner thigh there, it's kind of almost going into the join because of how high it is. Now it's potential that I could kind of wiggle this around. Let's see if I can get it higher if I move that around. Okay, still just wants to stop about there, but that's generally okay. So that doesn't, I was a little bit worried that might really impact where we could move the leg. Doesn't seem to, that's nice. I do like the texture on this pouch. We've got a really nice kind of leather-esque texture there on that, really nice. Okay, so now we've got the interesting knee articulation. So we've got the sort of sculpting running down the front here, and then you can see we've kind of got this big back part for the knee. So if we're gonna pull this one back, I gotta make sure I'm getting this aligned. Okay, so the hinges look really big on these ones just because of the size of the pants. So you can see we can get the knee quite high. That's really quite nice. And the fabric drapes down from the front, so you won't really see that huge big hinge from the front. We get a little bit of it in the back, just kind of hidden in there, and we do kind of get this effect from the side. But again, I'm not sure how you would do this better. If we look from the underside, you can see that hinge very clearly, but that's actually a really nice movement. It's not too tight. Obviously the bigger hinges are a little bit easier to move. And we've got the extra articulation point at the top of the boot. So I can completely turn the boot around so we can get some movement there. We don't always get that. And let's see, a little bit tight at the ankles as well. I can kind of get, there we go. Tip that foot all the way back. Very tight actually. If I get that back, there we go, clicks into place. And I like that we've got a little bit of a nod to the classic Boba Fett sort of original trilogy style boot there. There we go, very nice. And we've got those sort of grey spats over the boots there as well. Very nice detail. Okay, just a quick look at the hands. We've got a little bit of an armor plate on the back of the hand there and some straps. We've got a little bit of wrapping there, pretty much all the same color there as the tunic sleeves coming out from underneath this ribbed vest. And again here pretty much on the same side, we've got a little bit of an armor plate there, wrappings on the forearm and the sculpted sleeves. I like the sculpting here, the way it sort of drapes down over the elbow, very nice. We've got sort of more of a burgundy color for the fingers of the gloves there, very nice. Overall, really liking the detail of this figure. All of this was completely hidden in the box. Such a shame. I love it when I get a wonderful surprise when I'm opening up my figures. It's really exciting. Just going to line those pants up there a bit as well. So quite a lot of movement for that sculpting. Really cool. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the face. I do really like the likenesses that we get in the Black Series line. Of course, this is Boba Fett as we see him kind of fresh from the Sarlacc pit. He's spent time with the Tuskens. He hasn't spent his time in his Bacta tank like we see in the Book of Boba Fett, so he still has scarring. So I know that sort of face paint, detail, makeup on action figures can be a tricky point for collectors. Some people think it's too much, some people think it's not enough. This one is tricky. In some lights, in some of these scenes, it does look very white, very dramatic. In other scenes, it doesn't look quite as bad. I think this is a pretty good mix. I can just make out the very, very tiny sort of stippling digital dots from the printing technique used for this. I know if you are very skilled with an airbrush and miniature painting, you could potentially do this better than this mass-produced figure. But for what Hasbro has to do, the sheer amounts that they have to make and the production line used, I think this is a pretty good version of that sort of white scarring that we see across Boba Fett's face. We've just got very sort of faint lines running here, accented with that sort of white scarring, and very minimal paint on the rest of his head. Pretty much none here, just a little bit around the eyes and the lips. Overall, I think this is pretty good. We've got pretty standard articulation for the head, so we can get all kinds of good poses there. Very nice. Okay, so just going to quickly take a closer look at the weapons, and then we might get everything all assembled and see how we can pose him with the robe and everything. So I'm going to start off with the one that I couldn't see in the box. Just going to put Boba Fett down there for a minute. The blaster pistol. It was such a shame this was completely hidden along that bottom panel of the box, so I couldn't even see that it was packaged in there down by his boots. But we've got a very nice, shiny, dark, metallic, gunmetal grey blaster pistol. We've got some very fine detail. I like it when we have these gaps rather than when we sort of have that webbing plastic just to make it all one piece. We've got a very nice gap there, very nice gap here, and we do have some brown there as well. Very nice. So let's quickly check it out in his hand. So this one doesn't have a trigger guard. We've just got a little sort of cutout spot. We do have a extended finger here, so I'm hoping this will fit into his hand nicely. Of course, the articulation of these figure hands mean that sometimes they want to sort of swivel their hand around. So it's a bit of a tighter fit actually. See if I can get this in his hand. It's a bit of a wider barrel than, the sort of grip than some of the other. That's very tight. Very tight. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. I don't know if I'm going to get this in without a bit of a fight. Okay. Getting in there. He's really holding on to that one. Okay. Wow. Can you see how tightly his finger is in there? That is a really close fit. Wow. It's like really in there. He holds that very securely. That was a bit of a wrestle to get that in there. One of the tightest accessories I've found in the Black Series line, but he holds that really nicely. So now I'm going to get that one out of his hand. I'm just impressed with how close that finger is in there. It's just like a perfect fit. No wonder that was a bit of a wrestle to get that in there. And of course it's easier to get it out. Okay, let's quickly check that in his holster here. The holster doesn't have a gap or anything at the bottom. So I'm just going to see, yeah, that slips in there nicely. Looks very good. We are long past those old days of having massive oversized toy weapons that never seem to go anywhere. Looking very nice. I do like the scale of accessories now. So let's take a quick look at some of the other ones we've got. So we've got the long sniper rifle there that of course we see Tusken Raiders use. There is a plastic strap here. Just kind of slips on here. We can see that this is just a complete circle sculpted here. So if I really pull, I can probably pull it off the end here. And we have a small little loop with a peg here. So if I really pull on this, I'm sure I will be able to undo that. You can kind of see how it is attached there. I don't really want to pull this off. I'm really always a little bit anxious that I'm going to somehow snap the little pegs off these plastic straps. So I don't particularly want to pull mine off, but you can see it is not attached permanently. If you want to, you can remove this part if you don't like it, or perhaps you want to put on a soft goods one there. But I do like the painting on this one. We've got the base in the brown. We've got that sort of gold color accent there, and a dark gunmetal for the scope. Very, very nice. So we're going to try putting that in his hand, and then later on, I'm not sure the best way to hold it on this one, because it doesn't really have a classic sort of grip for this one. I don't really know the best way to hold this. I'll probably spend a bit of time doing that later actually, but for the sake of a little quick demonstration, we'll get this over him. So yeah, it's going to sit really nicely on the figure. Of course, we're going to put it over the cloak later as well. I think that looks really nice. Good maneuverability with that there. I'm just not sure. I'm going to have to definitely play around with the best way to hold it, because he's got that sort of thumb point there. But yeah, definitely going to do some posing with that one later. But the one that I'm really, really excited about is, of course, his gaffy stick. We don't see him sort of making this until later in the book of Boba Fett. But for me personally, I was so excited to see Boba Fett wield this. A little bit of backstory, as you probably know, this part of a traditional gaffy stick is based off a traditional Fijian wooden staff weapon or battle club. And so for us here in New Zealand, of course, Temuera himself is of Maori descent and ancestry. Maori do have their own wooden staff weapon called a taiaha. So Temuera is very well practiced in the fighting style, the traditional sort of fighting style with a taiaha. And so they brought that in for his performance as Boba Fett. So the way that he is wielding his gaffy stick, he is using his Maori ancestry and the way that he would wield a taiaha in those fight scenes. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. So just a little bit of fun knowledge for us Kiwis. It was really fun to see a Kiwi actor wielding something that we are familiar with in terms of the sort of Pacific Island weaponry with these wooden staffs, which I thought was really fun. So I'm really happy that Boba Fett has his own one. We have a cord attachment for this one, a black cord strung over it. So you could tidy this up, you could replace it, because we've kind of got a little bit of sort of ends here. It looks a little bit like a toy with these cord ends, but it's going to, if they were very, very tight and tied off or snipped off, they could, those knots could come undone. So you can tidy those up a little bit or perhaps replace it with your own, but nice that we can just sling that over him. Whichever way we want to, fits over there very, very nicely. And of course, we're going to do some posing with him holding it. So because this is a thinner staff weapon, we should be able to get this into his hands a little bit easier than that blaster pistol. His fingers are very tight, but there we go. So we'll be able to get some fun poses there. We've got a bit of just a classic C grip on his other hand. I'm just going to very quickly see if I can get a little bit of a pose here. I am not the best with posing. It does take me quite a while of sort of really, and I'm just a little bit anxious when it comes to these sorts of things as well. I do spend a little bit of time later before I add them to my display working on the best posing. And his wrist, because it flexes, it keeps wanting to just move his wrist rather than putting that in here. So I'm sure with a bit of time, I will be able to get him into some really cool gaffy stick poses. His hand just wants to keep moving on me, but you can imagine it there. I will definitely spend some time working on the poses there. So I'm going to very quickly see if I can put the cloak back on him for some sort of final closing thoughts. If I can get this back out of his hand, really happy to see all of this detail underneath. So now I can actually see what's going on with the articulation at the shoulders as well, because when I was getting that cloak off, I was a little bit anxious about why it felt so tight there. So now we can see sort of putting it on like a oddly shaped dressing gown. Okay, let's see how easy this is going to be to pull these back on. I'm hoping it'll be easier than taking it off was. Okay, get that elbow up past there. Okay, so there we go. Okay, nice and easily we can get that back on. So now I know what the articulation underneath looks like. I can work on that. So there we go. Back on. I definitely got to play with the hood. Okay, so I'm going to spend a few moments getting some posing with this, with a weapon in his hand, and we can sort of wrap up some final thoughts. So now we have Boba Fett as we see him on Tython with all of his soft goods and accessories on. I think he looks really cool. There is so much more going on with this figure than you would initially think with the way that he is packaged or kind of covered up in the box. He's got 3 accessories, so there is a lot of different posing options. We've got a big soft goods cloak that I am really impressed with how well it kind of sits down. I was a little bit worried the fact that it didn't have wire in the hood because of these gorgeous feathered edges there. Those weathered edges look really cool. So I was a little bit worried that the hood might be a little bit hard, that it would just kind of puff up and spring up once I got him out of the box, but it does actually fit down quite nicely. And I do just really like all the details here. We've just got a lot to work with. This is the sort of thing where, because there are so many different options, you could almost get him a couple of different times, you know, have him posed with the rifle, then a few figures over next to a stormtrooper, you've got him with a gaffy stick raised. I think it's really cool. I think this was a really fun one to kick off our Boba Fett celebration week. Really, really excited to finally get this one out of the packaging. I'm really happy with it. I think he looks really cool. So I'll just stand him here. There we go. So really, really happy. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another Star Wars Black Series 6-inch collectible and had a lot of fun. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again very soon for more Boba Fett Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a Black Series fan, I've also unboxed the Boba Fett Throne Room version figure. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as our whole Black Series unboxing playlist. This is the way.